I stood there on the perfectly shoveled walkway of 412, Maple Drive, warm cookies still steaming through the Tupperware lid, hoping the buttery scent might buy me back a sliver of dignity in Sunnyvale Estates. The HOA president, Karen Miller, opened the door wearing her signature pearls and that cashmere sweater she bragged about at every board meeting. She rolled her eyes like I was a piece of dog waste tracked in on someone's boot, then killed the entire neighborhood Christmas spirit with one flat sentence. 10 minutes later, she was tapping on my car window in the dark shopping plaza lot, whispering about a secret my late mother had buried years ago. I thought it was just old bylaws. It was actually a legal trap, and tonight it finally snapped shut on her. My name is Amelia Thompson. I'm 33, I pay my mortgage on time, and I've spent the last decade convincing myself that living in a gated community isn't supposed to feel like a noose tightening around your lawn. Sunnyvale Estates looks like a Christmas card on the outside. White fences, coordinated wreaths, every driveway shoveled before sunrise. But behind the scenes, it's run by a woman who treats community standards like her personal religion and anyone who questions them like a heretic. I live 3 streets over in the same cookie-cutter colonial my mother helped design before she died. I have a job that keeps the lights on. I have a car that starts in Ohio winters. On paper, I'm the model resident. Yet here I was, clutching a bottle of Pinot Noir in one hand and homemade sugar cookies in the other, reducing myself to a desperate neighbor begging for scraps of approval. The cookies were still warm. I timed the drive from my house perfectly, pulled them from the oven at exactly 4:30, let them cool 10 minutes, packed them with the neurotic precision that usually signals an impending breakdown. I wanted them perfect. I wanted the wine expensive enough to show respect, but not so expensive it looked like bribery. I just wanted to walk into the annual HOA holiday open house like a normal neighbor. The neighbor who had moved on. The neighbor who was fine. I was lying to myself. Of course I wasn't fine. I was starving for a seat at a table that had been sawed in half the day Karen Miller took over the board 3 years ago. The driveway was packed. I recognized every car. Karen's oversized SUV big enough to haul her ego, the board secretary's bright red coupe, and a dozen others belonging to residents who had quietly stopped waving at me after my 3rd warning letter for grass half an inch too long. The house glowed from the inside, golden light spilling onto the snow-covered lawn, making the shadows of the perfectly trimmed pines look long and sharp like accusations. I could hear them before I even rang the bell. Silverware clinking on china, low hum of conversation, a burst of laughter that sounded like it had been rehearsed for the occasion. It was the symphony of belonging, and I was standing in the cold without a ticket. I took a breath. The air stung my lungs. I told myself, ring the bell, hand over the gifts, say the script I rehearsed in the mirror, and leave. Hi, Karen, Merry Christmas. Just wanted to drop these off. Hope everyone's well, bye. Simple. Surgical. Painless. I pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed, that same twee melody the old board used before Karen replaced it with something more professional. The laughter inside cut off instantly. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Footsteps approached. Heavy. Deliberate. My stomach twisted into a knot. The door swung open and warmth rushed out smelling of roasted turkey, sage, and Karen's signature perfume she wore like body armor. Karen Miller stood there. She looked older than the last board meeting, lines around her mouth deeper, hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection. For a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, maybe recognition, maybe guilt, but it vanished, replaced by the look I had come to dread more than any fine. She looked me up and down. She looked at the wine. She looked at the cookies. And she rolled her eyes. It wasn't casual. It was theatrical, exhausted, the performance of a woman who had suffered enough. The way you look at a resident who dares to park 1 inch over the white line. It stripped me of my adulthood, my mortgage, my right to exist on the same street in a single motion. Amelia, she said, voice flat, devoid of any holiday cheer. Merry Christmas, Karen, I managed. My voice wavered, and I hated myself for it. I just want to drop these off. I know I've had a few disagreements with the board lately, but it's Christmas. She didn't move to let me in. She blocked the doorway with her body like a gatekeeper guarding paradise. Over her shoulder, I could see the dining room set with the good china, the same set my mother had donated when she founded the HOA 15 years ago. The chandelier was dimmed just right. Board members and their spouses sat around the table. Denise's cousin holding a wine glass. The secretary scrolling her phone, refusing to acknowledge the woman standing 10 feet away being eviscerated. They all saw me. Not one waved. Not one smiled. Not one said, "Let her in, Karen. It's Christmas." "We're eating," Karen said, as if I were a door-to-door solar salesman. "I worked on this menu for 2 days straight. We don't need a scene, Amelia. We don't need your drama." Drama. That word again. My complaints about the new fine schedule were drama. My request to see the reserve fund ledger was drama. My very presence on the street, I paid HOA dues to live on, was drama. I looked at the woman who had once called my mother the heart of Sunnyvale. I looked for any trace of the old Karen who used to bring casseroles when Mom was sick. She wasn't there. Only this pearl-wearing dictator who viewed me as an obstacle to her perfect evening. I could have fought. I could have thrown the wine bottle against the doorframe and given them the scene they accused me of creating. The anger was there, a hot coal in my chest. But I was 33. I wasn't going to scream on a porch in the snow in front of the entire board. "I understand," I said, voice hollow. I set the wine and cookies down on the doormat right next to her spotless leather boots. "Enjoy the turkey." She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look at the gifts. She just stepped back and began to close the door. I saw her eyes shift back to the dining room, already dismissing me, already returning to the warmth. The door clicked shut. The sound was final. I stood there 5 seconds staring at the wood grain, the Christmas lights on the railing blinking merrily, mocking me. I turned and walked back to my car at normal pace. I didn't run. I forced my legs to move like a normal neighbor. I backed out onto the street and drove 10 minutes without knowing where I was going, knuckles white on the wheel, black ice hiding under fresh snow. I ended up in the deserted Ridge Haven shopping plaza lot, same place I always went when the neighborhood felt too small. The big box stores were dark. Only the sodium vapor lamps cast that sickly orange glow over acres of empty asphalt. I parked in the middle, engine running for heat, and the shaking started. Hands first, then shoulders, teeth chattering. Not from cold, from the adrenaline crash. He rolled her eyes, I said aloud to the empty car. Such a small thing, but it hurt more than any $250 fine. An eye roll says you're beneath contempt. I lean my head back, close my eyes, try to breathe in for 4, out for 4, summoning the strength that had gotten me through the years after Mom died. Suddenly high beams flooded my car. A vehicle swerved in too fast for the ice, slammed brakes, skidded to a stop perpendicular to my bumper. Headlights cut off. I recognized the grille. Karen Miller's SUV. My heart hammered. She stepped out in just a cashmere sweater, no coat, wind whipping her helmet hair. She looked frantic, nothing like the composed tyrant who had shut the door 15 minutes ago. She ran toward my car, slipped on ice, caught herself on my hood, and banged on the window with her knuckles. "Amelia, open the door." Her voice was muffled but desperate. I stared. This was the woman who had just banned me from the party. I didn't unlock it. She banged again. "Please, just listen. I can't stay long. The board thinks I went for more ice." She looked over her shoulder like she was being watched. She looked terrified. Curiosity and that pathetic ember of hope made me lower the window exactly 2 inches. "You have 30 seconds, I said, voice ice. She leaned in, wine on her breath mixing with winter air. "It's about your mother," she whispered. "She left you something. Something I hid. And the rest of the board isn't allowed to know it exists." My stomach dropped. I had expected more insults. Not this. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I can't talk here," she hissed, shivering. "But it's not just old papers, Amelia. It's proof. I should have given it to you years ago. I was a coward." She reached into her pocket, but showed empty hands. "I didn't bring it. Too risky." Meet me in the community storage garage behind the pool house in 20 minutes. Park down the street. Walk through the back hedge. I'll leave the side door unlocked. We can talk there, but you cannot come into the main house. If anyone sees you, they'll know I called you. The terms were clear. I was allowed back on a HOA property only as a thief in the night. I was allowed my mother's legacy only if I remained invisible. I should have said no. My pride screamed at me to drive away. But then I thought about Mom's handwriting on that envelope I never received. I thought about the woman who had founded this neighborhood to protect residents, not rule them. She had bet on decency. She had lost. I was the only one left who could make sure her bet wasn't a total loss. 20 minutes, I said. I rolled the window up and drove away, leaving Karen standing alone in the orange glow, looking small and terrified in the snow. The drive back felt like a funeral procession. I passed houses with tasteful white lights, silhouettes of families laughing behind curtains. It felt like watching a species I no longer belonged to. I parked 2 houses down, killed the engine, and walked through the neighbor's hedge, spruce needles scratching my face. The back of Karen's house glowed like a lantern. I could see her shadow moving inside, holding court, probably complaining about certain residents who don't understand standards. The community garage was detached, dark and silent. Perfect metaphor for where the real business of Sunnyvale happened. I slipped inside. It smelled of gasoline, chlorine from the pool supplies, and damp potting soil. A single work light cast harsh interrogation room glare. Karen was pacing in front of the big red storage cabinet that held all the archived HOA records. When she saw me, she stopped, relief and terror mixing on her face. "You came," she whispered. I said I would. I stayed by the door, exit clear. "Where is it?" She gestured to the cabinet. "I haven't taken it out yet. I wanted you to see me open it, so you know I didn't tamper." I almost laughed. Tampering had happened the day she took over the board. She opened the bottom drawer, heavy with old minute books and ledgers. She reached in, fumbled with a false panel at the back, and pulled out a thin piece of plywood. Underneath, nestled in dusty rags, was a manila envelope. Yellowed corners, soft from years of hiding. In the center, in Mom's blue felt-tip pen, Amelia. Seeing it felt like a punch to the gut. Karen held it out, hands shaking. Take it, and go before the board comes looking." I walked forward, boots echoing on concrete. I took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper, something solid inside. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know," she swore. I never opened it. I was too afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid she knew I would let this happen, Karen whispered, voice cracking. Afraid she knew I would let the board become this. For a second the mask slipped, and I saw the woman who used to be my mother's friend. Then the motion sensor light outside clicked on. We both froze. "Go," she hissed. "Out the side door." "Run." I tucked the envelope inside my coat and slipped into the night. Behind me the main garage door opened, and I heard a board member's voice, shrill, asking what was taking so long. I didn't look back. I had what I came for. The trap had sprung, but this time I wasn't the one caught. I drove straight to the 24-hour Iron Skillet Diner 5 miles south. Fluorescent lights bright enough to expose every lie. I sat in the back booth, ordered black coffee, and placed the envelope on the table. It looked innocuous, standard 9x12, but to me it was a bomb. The adhesive flap had dried years ago. It popped open with a dry snap. 3 things slid out: a folded sheet of line paper, a silver USB drive with masking tape that read, "Watch me," and a handwritten index card titled Document Inventory. Mom had always been organized, even in the face of death. I picked up the letter first, hands shaking so badly I had to press my elbows to the table. "My dearest Amelia," it began, dated September, for months before the cancer took her. "If you're reading this, then Karen has finally done the one thing I asked, or you found it yourself. I hope it's the former. Your mother's handwriting was steady then, loops generous, blue ink sharp. She had diagnosed the board's future flaw with surgical precision. Karen loves control, Amelia. She loves it more than fairness. She will rewrite the bylaws. She will rewrite the reserve fund. She will erase me because my memory takes up space she wants for herself. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. She had predicted it all. I have left things for you outside the official HOA records. Wills and bylaws are public. I have done this differently. I set up a separate transfer on death reserve account at Hearthstone Financial, account 842901. It bypasses the board. It bypasses Karen. It is yours the moment I die. There is a restriction. The liquid funds unlock when you turn 30. I did this because in your 20s you might be tempted to use it to buy peace with people who should earn it. Money is not currency, Amelia. It is the ability to say no. I want you to be able to say no when Karen tries to make you small. Karen is not allowed to change the beneficiary. I made that legally binding. If anyone offers to manage this for you, run. I love you. Be the oak tree in a garden of willows. Love, Mom. I put the letter down. My coffee was cold. Money is the ability to say no. I had spent 5 years saying yes. Yes to every fine. Yes to every community improvement fee. Yes to staying quiet when Karen mocked my solar panels at the last meeting. I picked up the USB drive, booted my laptop right there in the booth, plugged it in. One file for Amelia.mp4. I connected earbuds. The video opened grainy, shot on an old webcam. Mom sat in her favorite armchair, the floral one Karen had donated to charity 2 weeks after the funeral. She looked sick, but her eyes burned fierce. "Hi, sweetie," she said. Her voice hit me like a wave. I gasped, hand over my mouth. "If you're watching this, you have the packet." "Good. Listen carefully. The account number is 842901. Banker is Mr. Henderson. He knows the situation. But here's the important part. Karen has never had durable authority over this fund. I never signed any board power of attorney that extends past my death. If anyone produces a document saying I gave her control, it is a lie. Look at the dates. Look at the ink. I only used blue in the last 6 months. Black ink, question it. Trust the paperwork, not the stories. Stories change. Paperwork does not. She leaned back, exhausted but smiling that tired, beautiful smile. "I love you, Amelia. Be the oak tree." The screen went black. I looked at the index card, a map of account types, policy numbers, original bylaws. A treasure map through a minefield. A slow, cold rage replaced grief. They had known. Karen had known this envelope existed. She had buried it under old pool chemicals and ledgers. And every fine she had levied on me since, the grass, the lights, the unauthorized mailbox, had been paid straight out of the fund that was supposed to protect residents like me. I gathered everything, paid the check, and walked out into the biting air. But this time the cold felt clarifying. I drove home, not to cry, but to prepare. Tomorrow was Christmas for everyone else. For me, it was a work day. I had a lot of reading to do. Christmas morning broke over Sunnyvale Estates with blinding white sunlight reflecting off fresh snow drifts. I didn't turn on carols. I didn't make pancakes. I made a pot of black coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat at my kitchen island with my laptop, Mom's letter, and the index card. The world outside was unwrapping gifts and roasting hams. I was about to perform an autopsy on an HOA reserve fund. I typed Hearthstone Financial into the browser. Mid-sized, respectable, exactly the kind of place Mom would choose. I log in using the account number 842901 and Mom's social security number, then answered the security questions only a daughter would know. Name of the stuffed bear lost in 1996, Mr. Buttons, secret ingredient in holiday cookies. Nutmeg, where we ran away for an afternoon in 2010, Lake Erie. Identity verified. Welcome, Amelia. I clicked Portfolio Summary. The number appeared in bold, $242,684.12. I blinked. It stayed. Not private jet money, but for a single woman in Ohio buried under HOA fines and student loans, it was freedom. It was the difference between working because I had to and working because I wanted to. And Karen had kept it from me. I navigated the transaction history. Early years were disciplined deposits of $400 every month from mom's librarian salary. Then January 2021, month mom died, normal deposit, then silence for 3 months. Then May 2021, withdrawal $2,500 labeled miscellaneous expense, authorized representative. June, $1,200 maintenance. July, $4,000 educational support. My stomach turned. July was when Karen's daughter Cara went to that expensive design workshop in Chicago. I remembered Karen bragging at the board meeting about using reserve funds wisely for the next generation. They hadn't used reserve funds. They had used mine. I grabbed a notepad and started listing dates and amounts. Deck redo in August, $3,600. New veneers for Karen in November 2022, $5,000 medical dental. Small, irregular, domestic SIPs. Over 3 years, nearly $45,000 have been siphoned out of the fund mom created to protect residents from exactly this kind of abuse. Every dollar had paid for Karen's lifestyle, while she fined the rest of us for Christmas lights 2 days too long. I spent the next week building the case. I printed transaction statements, highlighted every forged signature in black ink on documents mom's video had warned me about. I hired Elena, a no-nonsense real estate attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. She looked at the forensic report her handwriting expert produced and smiled like a shark. "This is not mismanagement," she said. "This is organized fraud. We drafted the demand letter. I wanted the remaining balance released immediately. Full repayment of the $45,000 plus interest, and a public correction of the bylaws Karen had rewritten in secret. I also wanted the board to know exactly who had funded their holiday party. The confrontation happened at the Iron Skillet again, neutral ground. I chose the same booth where I had first opened the envelope. Karen arrived first, flanked by her daughter Cara and the weak vice president Robert who had delivered the envelope. She was wearing her pearls again, trying to look like the reasonable president. She slid a folder across the table. "We can offer you this," she said, voice dripping fake sympathy. "A settlement agreement and non-disclosure. We'll borrow against the community pool fund, get you $20,000. That's nearly half of what was used. You sign, we put this behind us. It's Christmas, Amelia. For the neighborhood's sake." I scanned the clauses. Draconian. No disparaging remarks. Withdraw all complaints. Perpetual confidentiality. They wanted to buy my silence for 50 cents on the dollar. I slid my own folder across. The transaction history, the forensic report, the video transcript. "Look at the dates, Karen. August, September, October. $3,000 for Cara's tuition. That wasn't an emergency. That was a subscription. You weren't drowning. You were supplementing your lifestyle." Karen's jaw tightened. Veins stood out on her neck. "We had expenses. The neighborhood needed improvements. Your mother would have wanted us to share." My mother left a video explicitly saying she did not want that. I countered. She said, "Run if anyone offers to manage this for you." She knew you would do this. Karen's voice rose, cracking her polished veneer. "She was paranoid and selfish, and she turned you into a cold-hearted woman who counts pennies while the neighborhood suffers." I leaned forward. "I'm not counting pennies. I'm counting the $45,000 you stole. And you did it by forging her signature in black ink on a power of attorney document dated 2 weeks after she died." Robert finally spoke, voice trembling. "I signed the papers. I didn't read them." Karen said, "They were for utilities. I just wanted the board to stop fighting." Karen snapped at him to be quiet, but the damage was done. The slip that sealed it. If you had stayed obedient like you used to be, none of this would have happened. We could have handled it quietly. But no, you had to grow a spine. The diner went silent. Obedient. That was the word. Karen didn't want a board member. She wanted subjects. The money wasn't just greed. It was the leash. I stood up. "No settlement. My lawyer is requesting the original power of attorney from the bank tomorrow. We're subpoenaing the notary log. When we proved the witness was your best friend Brenda, who does Zumba with you, and the notary was your old tax office employee, $20,000 is going to look like pocket change compared to felony charges. Karen's face went chalk white. I walked out into the bright winter sun, hands shaking with adrenaline, not fear. I had finally cut the cord. The week that followed was paper cuts and printer ink while Karen and the board huddled trying to scrape together cash. Elena and I dismantled their House of Cards page by public page. Probate and HOA records are public, something Karen forgot. We pulled the original bylaws Mom had filed. We compared signatures. The forensic examiner's report was brutal. Hesitation marks, static friction, a signature drawn, not written. The witness was Brenda Colvin, Karen's Zumba partner. The notary was Sarah Jenkins, Karen's former employee. Organized fraud involving multiple parties. Elena filed the motion for discovery demanding every text, email, and voicemail between Karen, Robert, Cara, Brenda, and Sarah for the period surrounding Mom's death. The nuclear option. People panic when texts are requested because people say stupid things in writing. 2 days later, Cara texted me. Can I come over? I left my phone in the car. I'm recording this. She arrived pale, no makeup, eyes puffy. She confessed she had printed the blank power of attorney forms the day Mom died. Karen told her it was just tax paperwork. Cara had been 20, grieving, scared of losing her college funding. She had asked Denise, wait, Karen, what to do with the envelope she found first 5 years ago. Karen had taken it, promised to handle it, then used the reserve fund for everything from the new deck to Cara's spring break trip. The text Cara forwarded proved conscious concealment. Just don't mention it at the board meeting. What she doesn't know keeps the peace. That single message destroyed their defense. The hearing was scheduled for December 23rd, exactly 1 year after the cookie rejection. The small claims courtroom felt claustrophobic. Karen sat at the defendant's table, lawyer expensive and tired. Robert looked like a ghost. Cara sat alone in the back row. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Holloway, had read every filing. She looked at Karen. Mrs. Miller, your counsel claims this was a familial, excuse me, neighborhood misunderstanding. Do you still stand by that after seeing the plaintiff's Exhibit C? Exhibit C was the text. Karen's lawyer tried to spin, preserving community unity. The judge cut him off. Did the plaintiff consent? Not expressly. Elena stood. Because the assets were non-HOA. They were stolen, Your Honor. And we have a witness prepared to testify the defendant knowingly concealed the beneficiary designation for 5 years. The judge turned to Robert. Mr. Vice President, you had a fiduciary duty. Did you or did you not know about the transfer on death account? The room went silent. Robert stood slowly. He looked at Karen, then at me. I knew, he whispered. Speak up, sir. I knew, he said louder, voice cracking. I found the envelope, and I let Karen convince me to keep it closed. A gasp rippled. The judge wrote it down. Let the record show the vice president admits knowledge of the asset and failure to distribute. She turned to Karen, voice icy. This court takes a very dim view of forging documents for the deceased. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation into notary fraud and embezzlement. Karen put her head in her hands. The judge looked at me. I am ordering the immediate release of the remaining funds to MS Thompson. Furthermore, full repayment of the $45,000 plus statutory interest within 90 days. If liquid assets are unavailable, a lien will be placed on the community center property. Gavel banged. Court adjourned. The legal machinery moved with terrifying swiftness. On December 24th, we gathered in the mediation room for the final settlement decree. Karen looked broken, hair in a severe knot, no makeup, gray exhaustion showing. Robert sat beside her like a man already executed. Elena laid out the terms. Immediate wire transfer of the balance. Repayment schedule secured by a lien on the community center Karen loved so much. No non-disclosure. No confidentiality. Public record. Karen tried one last time. Kara has suffered enough. Do you want this in the papers? Just sign and promise to be quiet. It's Christmas. I looked at her and finally saw the fear behind the pearls. No, I said. I am not humiliating you. You humiliated yourself when you forged Mom's signature. I'm just making sure the record reflects the truth. We signed. I used blue ink. Karen used black. Her hand shook so badly the letters looked jagged. The check would wire by close of business. One phone call to my employer or any resident, and she would be in contempt. At 6 p.m., I drove back to 412 Maple Drive. The street was picture perfect again. Snow, inflatables, glowing windows. The driveway was full, just like the first night. I walked up the path carrying only the signed judgment and the empty manila envelope. No cookies. No wine. No desperation. I rang the bell. Robert opened it wearing the same cashmere sweater. Behind him, the house smelled of turkey and sage. The laughter inside was quieter now, subdued. He looked at me and, muscle memory, rolled his eyes. Slight. Quick. The tiny upward flicker that said, "Here comes the trouble again." "Amelia," he said wearily. "You came." He started to motion me toward the garage. I stepped onto the doormat, but didn't cross the threshold. "I am not waiting in the hall," I said, voice carrying clearly into the house where I knew Karen was listening. "I am not sneaking through the back hedge. Here is your copy of the judgment. And here," I placed the empty envelope in his hand, "is the container you hid from me for 5 years. He reached for it, confused. "Why don't you come in? Just for a drink. Kara is asking about you. We can put this behind us." "No," I said. "We can't. You used this door to push me out exactly 1 year ago. You rolled your eyes at me because I was an inconvenience. You treated a resident like a solicitor because you were afraid of your president." I pointed to the empty envelope. "I am returning the responsibility you lost. You have to live in this house now. You have to sit at that table and know the food you're eating was paid for with stolen dues. You have to look at Karen every day and know she made you a criminal. That is your inheritance, not mine." Tears filled his eyes. "Don't leave like this." "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm escaping." I reached out, grabbed the brass handle, and pulled the door shut myself. Click. The sound was final. This time I had written the ending. I walked down the driveway without looking back. I didn't care who watched from the windows. I got into my car, checked my phone. Wire transfer complete, $242,000 now mine. Elena texted, "It is done. You are free." I started the engine. The heater blew warm air against my face. I wasn't the neighbor who needed cookies to buy acceptance. I wasn't the resident who needed an envelope to feel safe. I was Amelia Thompson. I was the oak tree. And for the first time in 33 years, the road ahead of me was entirely, beautifully clear of HOA signs. I put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving the house, the lies and the silence in the rearview mirror where they belonged.